It's taken 17 years and thousands of deals for me to finally craft the ultimate purchase and sale agreement for real estate wholesaling. And on this video, not only am I gonna break it down for you, but I'm also gonna give it to you for free. All of that and more coming up.
Go to 8weekacademy.com to claim your free copy of Jerry Norton's most popular training. In it, he reveals his blueprint for making $100,000 per year with real estate.
Hey, if you're new here, I'm Jerry Norton. I went from dead broke to a millionaire flipping houses, and after doing 1,000 deals, I created this channel to help you master the art of wholesaling and flipping real estate so you can live your dream life. Be sure to subscribe and click the bell icon to get notified when new videos are released. Here it comes. I am not a lawyer, nor am I giving legal advice. You are a big boy or a big girl, and you alone are responsible for your own actions, so always seek competent professional legal advice before transacting real estate. Now, as a wholesaler, once you've verbally agreed on price and terms with a seller, it's time to secure the deal by executing a written agreement. Now, once in writing, the seller is committed and obligated to the terms of the contract, and as such, cannot sell the property to anyone else. A written contract is also mandatory for a title company to open escrow and transact the closing. Bottom line, no contract, no deal. But before we get started, I want to make sure something is crystal clear. Real estate is governed and regulated state by state. That means contract law varies from state to state, and that means the contracts themselves are going to vary from state to state. Now, licensed real estate agents are required to use their state-approved contracts. So if you ever make an offer on an on-market property where there are real estate agents involved, you don't need to worry about providing the purchase and sale contract. They will do that. They will even assist you in filling it out, but you still need to understand what you're filling out and what needs included to make sure your contract is wholesaler friendly. Now, I did a video that breaks it down exactly what you need the agent to include in that offer. I'll put the link to that video in the description below and you can watch it later. But when it comes to off-market properties where you are dealing directly with the seller and no agents are involved, it's up to you to come up with a purchase and sale agreement. And having a super duper wholesaler friendly contract is one of the most important tools you need as a wholesaler. And even if you think you have a good one, throw it away because mine is better, which I'll show you, so keep watching. And be sure to stick around to the end of this video because I'm going to show you how to download mine for free. Now, when I say wholesaler friendly, what I mean is the contract has to have everything you need to make the process of assigning your contract to a cash buyer simple and clear and addresses all of the things that you're going to need to do to assign that contract. And most importantly, it sets the right expectations for the seller. And if you're like I was when I first got started, understanding how to fill out a purchase and sale agreement may seem intimidating and overwhelming, but once you understand the mechanics of what's included in the contract, and after you go through the process of filling it out a few times, it's actually pretty easy. So what I want to do now is pull up on the computer here my ultimate purchase and sale agreement designed exclusively for wholesalers and break it down for you. But before we get started, there are two very important things that you'll notice about my contract. First, I do not use the word contract anywhere. Instead, I use the word agreement. And when I'm talking to sellers, I try not to use the word sign and instead use the word approve. So instead of saying to a seller, sign this contract, instead say, approve this agreement. The reason is because when the human mind hears the word sign a contract, it immediately thinks legally binding, repercussions, and lawyer, okay? Whereas approve this agreement is much less intimidating and evokes a feeling of trust and relationship and unity. And trust me, it makes a huge difference. Okay, let's get started. Up here on my screen, I have the purchase and sale agreement. Now, you'll notice here, the first line here says this purchase and sale agreement, parentheses, the agreement. So from here on out, it's going to refer to this contract as an agreement, not a contract, okay? So it says the agreement, it's entered in by and between. That blank right here is where you are going to put your name or entity, and then notice it says and or assignee. Now that's just in there. It's just simple to add it in there, so it's automatically included. And then parentheses, that is buyer. So you're going to be referred to as buyer, you the wholesaler. Right here, you put your address. And then this line here is the seller's name with an address of, and then the seller's address. Okay, number 1, opening. The opening, parentheses, will occur upon the date of this agreement and it's mutually executed and acknowledged by title escrow or closing agent attorney. Now that's going to depend on your state, which one of those applies, but it's going to refer to that person now as the escrow agent throughout this agreement. And opening just means we're now opening escrow. We're now starting a transaction, right? Okay, so number 2 here is property. Now, seller hereby agrees to sell and buyer hereby agrees to buy the real property in its as-is condition. And then right here is where you would put the address of the property. Purchase price here, the purchase price to be paid at close of escrow. Now, this is a term you're going to hear quite a bit, abbreviated as COE. Close of escrow is the day of closing. And then right here, you would spell out the price, and then right here, you would just put the numbers or digits. The purchase price shall be paid to seller as follows. An earnest money deposit of, if you want to put an earnest money, you can leave that blank. You can put $1, $10, $100, whatever, it's up to you. I normally don't pay earnest money when I'm dealing directly with private sellers. That's more of an on-market thing. But if you did, then the balance would be the difference between the purchase price right here less your earnest money equals the balance that would be due at close of escrow. Now, here's a little clause here, earnest money deposit, or we're going to refer to that as EMD, to be held in an insured escrow account and held by escrow agent, and if escrow closes, the earnest money deposit in escrow shall be credited against the purchase price. If this agreement is canceled by buyer pursuant to any terms of this agreement, buyer becomes entitled to a return of the earnest money, and escrow agent shall immediately refund to buyer all earnest money then in escrow. Okay, so in other words, if for whatever reason this doesn't close, you get your earnest money back. Number 5, financing. Funds to purchase property shall be, and then my contract here has a couple different options. So you're going to check box the one that applies. So cash, and then cash is defined as capital from buyer's personal funds and or buyer's investors, partners, and other unconventional lending sources. That could be hard money, private money. This agreement is not contingent on buyers securing funds to close. Now, it's really important that we have this in here and we clarify this. As a wholesaler, it may not be your funds. In fact, most of the times it's not because you're signing your contract, right? So this makes it very clear. This tells the seller, hey, money's coming in. It's not coming from traditional financing. There's no contingency on financing. In other words, there's nothing that says you have to get approved to get financing in order to close escrow, right? You're going to get the funds from somewhere, unconventional methods, or your own, or your investors or partners or wherever, and you're going to close regardless of where the funds are coming. That's what that says. So a lot of times people get confused with an all cash offer. They think all cash means it's $100 bills in a suitcase, under your mattress or whatever. No, it just means that there's no contingency to obtain the funds to close. Okay, or we could choose here, subject to buyer taking over seller's existing loan of, and then you could put that number in there. That would be a subject to. It could be seller financing with the following terms, and that could be a down payment, interest rate, or whatever, balloon. Traditional financing, let's say you were doing traditional financing, contingent on buyer obtaining the following terms, and then you could put in there a finance contingency that you get a certain interest rate, a certain down payment, and so on. The last one there is very unlikely that we'll use as wholesalers, but I included it in there just in case you ever use this outside of wholesaling and you get traditional financing. Okay, number 6, inspection period. Now this is really cool here. Buyer's obligations to close this transaction are subject to the satisfaction of buyer's investigations and inspections of the property. Buyer shall have until the business day before close of escrow, called the inspection period, during which time buyer will have the absolute right to cancel this agreement for any reason whatsoever at buyer's sole and absolute discretion. Upon such cancellation, buyer shall be entitled to a return of all earnest money held in escrow, unless buyer gives written notice of cancellation before the expiration of the inspection period, which again is all the way up until the day before closing. Then buyer will be deemed to have elected not to cancel this agreement. So what does this one say? Number 6, basically you have all the way until close of escrow to cancel the contract for whatever reason. Okay, really like that. It's protects you the entire time in the contract. Number 7, access to property. Between date of opening, right, when you open escrow, herein, and close of escrow, seller grants buyer and or buyer's employees, inspectors, partners, investors, contractors, and or agents access to the property as follows. Now, all of those people also include your cash buyers, because a cash buyer is technically your partner in the transaction. So this is saying that you're going to have access to the property one way or another, or anybody on your team that you need to send over there. Now, it's going to depend on how that's handled based on if it's vacant or occupied. So you'll checkbox it if it's vacant, or you'll checkbox this one if it's occupied. So vacant says, if the property is vacant as of the opening, buyer reserves the right to install a lockbox on the property, which will contain a key to the property. Seller acknowledges and agrees that the lockbox will permit access to the property. Seller acknowledges and agrees that there is a risk in having a lockbox on the property, and that it is possible that an unauthorized person may go in the property. Buyer is not insuring seller against theft, loss, or vandalism resulting from any unauthorized access. So this is making sure you're protected and not blamed if somebody goes in there that shouldn't go in there. Occupied, so let's say that it is occupied, meaning a seller or a tenant is living in the property. If the property is occupied by seller, tenant, or otherwise, as of the opening, seller shall permit buyer access with 24-hour notice. So you can still get in there with everybody that needs to get in there, but now you're going to give them 24-hour notice, and that's just being courteous because somebody's living in the property. Okay, number 8 is tenant occupied. If the property is currently in use as a rental property, tenant shall, and then you get to pick one of two options: vacate property on or before close of escrow, or if the tenant is going to stay, continue occupying property according to applicable and current lease agreement. Seller shall deliver the following to buyer within 5 days after opening. So they're going to have to provide you with this: a current lease on the property, a certified rent roll, which seller shall update at least 5 days before close of escrow, evidence of security deposit on hand, if any. Hi, sweetheart. I'm just doing another video. You brought me some lunch?
Mom said to give you.
Oh, a salad? That's nice. Thank you. What else you got for me in there?
It's just
That's
napkins.
it? What's this?
That's just a stuffed pig.
Oh, that's yours?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for bringing this to me. You're so sweet.
Yeah. Yeah, but Dad,
Huh?
if you sell this, guess what it does?
What?
It gives you money, and people give you money.
They do?
Yeah.
All right, well, here, you take this stuff in the bag. This looks like all your stuff. There's a juice box in there, too. All right, I'll see you later. Can you close the door?
Yeah.
All right, love you.
And you do.
Okay, no, so if it's occupied, A, current leases of the property, a certified rent roll. Certified means they're going to validate that the tenant's been paying. Evidence of security deposit. So if there's a deposit, you're going to get that, right? Or whoever the end buyer is going to get that deposit because they're going to inherit that with the tenant. Okay, number 9 then is escrow agent. Seller and buyer hereby employ, fill in the blank, and this is where you put your wholesaler-friendly title company. And then you can put their phone number as well. They're going to be the escrow agent. Now, this is really important. We, the wholesaler, are going to choose the title company, and the seller is going to agree to that. Now, if you don't have a title company, a wholesaler-friendly title company at the time of signing this, you can just put escrow agent of buyer's choice or something like that, right? That way the seller's agreeing that whoever you choose is going to be who you close escrow with. Okay, so they're going to act as the escrow agent for this transaction. The agreement constitutes the escrow instructions to escrow agent. If required by real estate governance in the state of, put your state, escrow agent is hereby authorized and instructed to prepare and execute on behalf of buyer and seller an affidavit of property value using the purchase price for the established value of the property. Now, this is very important because in some states you want to establish that everybody's agreeing that the value is what you're buying the property for. Okay, number 10, close of escrow. The closing date shall occur on or about, and then you can put the date. Now, quick tip here. I don't know how much back and forth is going to happen before I finally get the fully executed contract, or agreement, right? We don't say contract. So what I'll say instead, or what I'll put here instead is 30 days from accepted offer. or 15 days from accepted offer, whatever it is, if you want to have that leeway to make sure that the time frame to close does not start until you have the fully executed contract. Or you could put a date in there too, however you want to do that. So the closing date is, you put the date in there, shall occur when exclusive physical possession is given to buyer and the deed is recorded at the appropriate county recorder's office. Buyer and seller shall comply with all terms and conditions of the agreement, execute and deliver to escrow agent all closing documents, and perform all other acts necessary for close of escrow to occur. In other words, the seller may have to get a payoff or things may have to happen and the seller's agreeing to that in order to be ready to close. Buyer shall have the right to approve the property's title status before close of escrow. So you want to make sure you have clear title, and that's what this says here. Title to the property shall be conveyed to the buyer at close of escrow by a general warranty deed or equivalent warranty deed. Now, a warranty deed is the best deed you can get. It insures the property. Your cash buyer is going to want that, and so that's really important. And you want to have an owner's title insurance policy, and and then this is really important. Look at this line right here, guys. Buyer shall take title as determined by buyer before close of escrow, meaning you can change who the buyer is. That's that and or assigns clause that we have in our contract. Now, guys, honestly, that's not even necessary because a contract is assignable unless it says it's not assignable. But just to make sure that the seller is super clear and everybody involved, you have the right to change who the buyer is on the contract or agreement before close of escrow. Okay, so escrow and closing fees. Closing fees due at close of escrow with the exception of delinquent property taxes, mortgage liens, mechanics liens, IRS liens, judgments, or any other liens to be paid as follows. So, guys, when we say to a seller, buyer to pay all closing fees, it's really common for wholesalers to say that. Well, that's not counting the big ones like judgments and liens and loans, right? And back taxes from 5 years ago, none of that. It's talking about the escrow fee, it's talking about recording fees, all the normal transactional fees when you buy and sell real estate. Now, every state handles closing fees differently. Some states, for example, the seller pays title insurance, and some states the buyer typically pays title insurance. So, you know, who pays it, you get to decide on the agreement right here. So it says, buyer and seller shall each pay their respective escrow and closing fees according to the usual and customary practice in the state of, and then put your state. So that would be if each one's going to pay their own fees as your state normally does it. Or you could choose buyer and seller agree to split evenly all escrow and closing fees. So whatever they come to, right down the middle, seller pays half, buyer pays half. Or buyer shall pay all escrow and closing fees, or seller shall pay all escrow and closing fees. Now again, typically for wholesaling, what a lot of wholesalers do is they put that the buyer shall pay all escrow and closing fees, and then that gets passed on to the cash buyer once you assign your contract, and that's a benefit to the seller. But a lot of times, guys, I'll negotiate these as part of the terms. So for example, if I can't get the seller to come down on price where I want to be, maybe I'll say, hey, I'll tell you what, I'll come to your price, but why don't you pay all the closing fees, you know, as an example. But either way, you've got that as an option to choose in your agreement. Okay, number 12 talks about prorations of property taxes. Real property taxes payable by seller will be prorated to close of escrow based upon the latest tax information available. Okay, number 13, property turnover. Seller shall provide buyer with the keys to the property on day of close of escrow. That's pretty standard. Now, number 14 is one that I've added in after having to do lots of trash outs on properties. So here's what it says: debris, personal belongings. At close of escrow, seller shall deliver the property to buyer, and then we've got two options: with debris and or personal belongings that are currently present in the property, and buyer assumes all responsibility for trash out, removal, and cleanup of said debris and belongings. In other words, hey, leave the property with all your crap in it, I'll buy it just like that. Now, I do this all the time because when I buy hoarder houses or houses from people that haven't been taking care of the property, accumulated a lot of stuff, sometimes a tenant leaves and it's got all kinds of stuff in it, it's a big hassle sometimes for a seller to have to do all of that. So as a benefit, I'll say, hey, we'll just take all of that. Take whatever you want, whatever you leave, I'll handle it. And by doing that, it's a huge service to the seller. But again, I mean, outside of your agreement, you want to make sure you understand the cost of that trash out. I've got a trash out right now we're doing that we're thinking is going to be around $10,000 in total trash out, because it's floor to ceiling basement garages full of the seller's stuff that we have to now get rid of. So we actually built that into our offer and got a reduced price because of handling that. And the seller gladly took the reduction to not have to deal with it. But if you want it to be free of all debris and belongings, then you'll check box the next one here that says, without debris and or personal belongings. All debris and or personal belongings to be removed from the interior and exterior of the property. In the event the property is not left in a neat and clean condition, buyer will have cleanup completed at seller's expense, which cost at buyer's option may be deducted from the purchase price. Seller's obligation to pay buyer shall survive the cancellation of this agreement at close of escrow. Any items remaining in the property as of close of escrow will be considered trash and removed by the buyer. So you better get it out of there if you want it. Okay, so number 15 is appliances. Now I buy a lot of properties that have appliances. At close of escrow, all working appliances currently present in the property shall not be included in the sale herein or be included in the sale herein with the exception of, and then maybe they want to keep their fridge or their washer and dryer or whatever, and then they can take that. So you check box one of those two options. And number 16 is if there's anything else. So additional personal property, the following personal property to be included in the sale herein, if any. So for example, I recently bought a house and there was a motorcycle in the garage and I put in there, motorcycle included just to see if they would, throw it in there, and they did. So we bought the house with a motorcycle that started on the first kickover, which was really fun. Okay, number 17, marketing. Now this is a really cool clause here, guys. If permissible by real estate governance in the state of, put your state. So if, guys, now not all states allow this. Seller authorizes buyer to advertise the property for sale or rent as a principal to the contract, not the seller's broker, agent, or representative, and place signs on or advertise online the property. Now, I love this because some states allow you to market your contract not as the owner, but as having an equitable interest in the contract. Now, again, not all states allow that, so if your state allows it, good for you, pretty awesome. Number 18, seller's deliveries. Seller shall deliver the following to buyer within 5 days after opening. Written 5-year insurance claims history regarding the property, or a claims history for the length of time the seller has owned the property, if less than 5 years, from the seller's insurance company. Now, this is something that I really love to do because I want to see if there was an insurance claim filed by the current owner and know what that issue was. Maybe the basement flooded, maybe there was a fire. That'd be really good to know when buying a property, don't you think? Okay, number 19, guys, this is a really important clause. It's something that I've recently added in. I actually added this from going through a really terrible experience where this became an issue for me on one of my wholesale deals. Let me read it to you first and then explain. Number 19, seller acknowledges that buyer is an investor and purchases properties with the intent to lease, flip, resell, or otherwise make a profit. Seller acknowledges that the purchase price may be less than market value and is willingly selling it at such for convenience, to save time, lack of funds, to renovate, and or other personal reasons. Seller waives any claims against any existing equity or added value arising from the property. Buyer has not made seller any representations or promises as to the value of the property in its as-is condition. Now, what is this saying? Basically, the seller can't come back and say, hey, I didn't know you were going to wholesale the property, or hey, I didn't know you were going to flip it and make a profit. I didn't know you were going to just quickly resell this, or any claim against a profit that you're making. They know clearly in writing that you're an investor and your intent is to make a profit. Now, I did a video where this actually happened to me, where title would not insure. It wasn't any issue with the seller, but title would not insure my second closing. It was a back-to-back closing because I was making too much money, and they were worried that the seller might come back on title and make a claim against title insurance that they were unfairly treated and sold at a discount and were coerced into selling it to me. It was ridiculous. So now it's built right into our offer or our agreement. By the way, if you want to watch that video to really understand this more, I'll put the link in the description below and you can check it out. Okay, number 20 is remedies. So in other words, if the seller for any reason doesn't do their end of this agreement, then you have the right to cancel the agreement and get full repercussions of anything that comes out of that, right? Legal action or otherwise. So I'm not going to read that whole thing, but that's what that says. 21 is just the lead-based paint. Basically, if the house was built prior to 1978, everybody knows about lead-based paint. Okay, next is section 22, and this is just talking about representations by seller. So it's making it, there's a whole bunch of them here. What is there? All the way down F. There's a whole bunch of statements here, but it's basically making sure that the seller is fully aware of everything that they're disclosing to you, and that they're aware of that and they're being honest about everything. And so, for example, one that's really important here is E. As of opening, seller has not entered into any other agreement or contract to sell the property. So things like that, it's talking about latent defects. They're telling you everything that they know about the property, and they're accountable for that, right? So they can't come back, you can't find out something afterwards and the seller did not tell you that and think that that's okay. Okay, so number 23, other agreements. Seller shall not enter into an agreement or contract to purchase with anyone else concerning the property from and after opening. Should seller participate in another agreement which will interfere with close of escrow, seller will be responsible for any and all costs and losses to buyer. So in other words, this seller can't backdoor you and sell the property to your cash buyer or somebody else at a higher price. They're fully aware of that and agreeing not to do that. Okay, number 24 is an indemnity and release of claims. In other words, the seller is going to hold you harmless. That's that whole paragraph right here just says that. Agency number 25, this is very important since this is off market. It says seller acknowledges that seller has not been represented by buyer and by any representative of buyer with respect to the purchase and sale of the property. Seller agrees and understands that the buyer and the buyer's representative is not acting as a broker or agent in the transaction and has been acting solely as buyer's own benefit as a principal to the agreement. Seller agrees to hold buyer free from any and all liability regarding the property and transaction arising from any claim of agency. In other words, no real estate agents. You're not a real estate agent in this transaction. You're an investor. Seller acknowledges that, and nobody can come back and say, hey, a commission is owed to me or anything like that. Number 26, assignment and release. This is cool here, guys. Seller agrees and acknowledges that buyer may assign its rights under this agreement to a wholly or partially owned entity of the buyer and or a third party that will close directly with the seller. If such an assignment should happen, seller agrees to release buyer from any liability or duties under this agreement. Guys, it doesn't get any more clear than that. You can wholesale your contract. Okay, then number 27, it's called miscellaneous, and there's a bunch of different things. We won't go through all of these, just the significant ones. H is saying that this can be done electronically, so if you DocuSign it or if you have my system Flipster, it'll automatically do it for you, but digital signatures are binding and count. Letter N is basically saying that they've voluntarily agreed to enter into this agreement, and they, again, had the chance to seek legal counsel following the state laws, and then acceptance. So this here is saying that they have until whatever time on whatever date to accept this agreement. So that way, this agreement only stands for whatever time frame you put in there. They can't come back and agree to it 6 months later or anything like that. Number 28, if there's anything else you want to add to your agreement, you can fill that in right there. And then the signatures. And that's it, guys. So prior to the release of this video, I used to give away for free the download link to my old purchase and sale agreement. But as of this recording, I've updated that link. So now we'll give you this new and improved, super amazing and awesome updated version. So if you want this for free, all you have to do is leave a comment and say, Jerry, you are a flipping genius. Give me that ultimate wholesaler purchase and sale agreement, and I'll give you the free download link. And by the way, those of you that are a subscriber to Flipster, I'm in the process of updating Flipster with this new agreement as well. Now that's gonna be coming out shortly. So if you've never heard of Flipster, it's the nation's #1 wholesaling and house flipping deal management system to help you organize, streamline, and automate all of the steps to wholesaling and flipping houses, including digital contracts that you can email directly to the seller for electronic signatures right on their smartphone or computer. Now, digital contracts are just one of dozens of tools included with Flipster. To learn more and see it in action, just go to getflipster.com. Next, I want you to watch a video where I break down how to fill out an assignment agreement used to wholesale your deals to cash buyers. So watch that now, and if you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe to my channel. With over 650 videos, this is the #1 channel on YouTube for all things wholesaling and flipping, and I'll see you on the next video.